Mark Etheridge here for the D1 Nerdcast. I'm here with Kendall Rogers and Aaron Fitt, and we're going to select the field of 64. We'll do it in podcast form, and we'll go through, we'll pick the top 8 seeds, the host sites, the at-large teams, the automatic qualifiers from each league, and we'll try to do this in a crisp hour and 15 minutes or so. So that's the plan. So keep in mind, we're projecting as the field ends. So just because a team is in a great position today doesn't mean we feel like they're going to remain that way. So keep that in mind as we go through this exercise. So at the top of the field, guys, any changes from LSU, who's been our top, I guess, all season?
And let me quickly interject here also that we're recording this on Tuesday before the Tuesday games have taken place. So we'll post this on Wednesday. There'll be some RPI movement between now and then, but there's your caveat. But to answer your question, I think I still like LSU just because of their remaining schedule is favorable and they're in great spot in the league at 12-5. I mean, I know they're behind South Carolina in both the standings and the RPI. South Carolina's number 1, LSU's number 3. But it just feels like the remaining schedule is much more favorable for LSU.
I agree.
Yeah, and as a matter of fact, kind of going back to the weekend dish, if you're a SEC Extra subscriber, Mark dove into the remaining schedules and looking at the remaining schedules, LSU has the number 11 strength of schedule remaining in conference play. So that gives you an idea of just, I wouldn't say there's remaining schedules weak, but it's weaker than, say, Kentucky or South Carolina. South Carolina at 8, Kentucky at number 1 in the remaining SEC strength of schedule.
Yeah, definitely. When we talk about Kentucky, I mean, good gracious, look at who they've got left, and where LSU's the opposite of that. I mean, with Alabama, Auburn, Mississippi State, and Georgia, I mean, Alabama's 9-9 in conference, and everyone else has a losing record. So LSU sets up to possibly get a sweep or two, and which they haven't had until this past weekend.
So do we stick with Wake Forest at number 2, or do you, at this point, has South Carolina done enough to move past Wake Forest?
That's a good question.
I mean, you got to figure Wake is going to run away with the ACC title, and South Carolina may or may not win the SEC. So that would be a feather in Wake Forest cap if you're looking for tiebreakers.
Yeah. I mean, we can keep it the way it is for another week and see where it goes.
I'd be inclined to.
Those are the next.
Yeah, I'm fine with Wake and South Carolina in that order.
Yeah.
South Carolina moves up a couple spots. Vanderbilt had been 3 last week. Now it's South Carolina.
The thing about that too is, like, as a committee, like, I feel like the committee will view those 3 teams almost pretty much equally.
Yeah.
And if you're in a committee room, like, why would you just stack 2 SEC teams together when you just throw an ACC team there in the middle? So.
And there's honestly no real advantage. I mean, if you're in the top 8, so in fact, 1 and 2 are going to be in different brackets anyway in Omaha. So
number 4. So candidates here last week we had Vanderbilt and Arkansas up in this range. Vanderbilt gets swept by Tennessee. They're down to number 8 in the RPI, but they're still 13-5 in the league, which is quite good. Arkansas, after getting swept at Georgia, you would think would drop some. They're still 5 in the RPI, but they're 11-7 in the league, and they're kind of walking wounded. I don't know that there's another team here though. That's
the exercise, right? Well, you'd like to drop them, but somebody's got to take their spot.
Yeah.
And, this is kind of one of those things where, okay, if you continue to have to play good teams every week, you're going to lose. This is baseball, right? Yeah. No one just goes and runs the table. So for me, those are still my next 2 teams. I mean, we can.
Yeah, I think so too. Vanderbilt 4, probably.
Yeah.
Arkansas 5.
Yep.
We had Virginia at 6. They lost their 3rd series in the last 4 weeks. We had Florida at 7. They get swept at South Carolina. We had East Carolina at 8. They get swept by Wichita. So we've got some room here. I don't know what do you got, NMG?
Do you look at Coastal?
I think you have to.
Yeah, I like Coastal here, and here's why. I was just kind of looking at them as y'all were talking. RPI of 8. The thing I really like about them guys, they're 9-5 on the road. They're number 8 non-conference strength of schedule.
Yeah.
which a lot of that is midweek baked, but still, right? I mean, you got to go off of what their non-conference strength of schedule is, and it's 8 in the country. Yeah, and they're 6-4 against top 50. I mean, that's not amazing, but still, I mean, those are across the board solid metrics.
Yeah,
and probably, if you could go in line to like East Carolina last year, I bet you those were comparable to where East Carolina was last year at this point.
Right.
The other thing I'll bring up is I did this on a few teams because I'm working on something for an SEC extra piece. But record versus the field, remember that last year or the last couple of years? So it's kind of, it's hard to do if you don't have the field, of course, but you can kind of tell who's in consideration for it.
Yeah,
Coastal's 10-6, and for me, that's a metric I care about. Okay.
Same.
Because those are the teams you're going to have to beat to win a championship. Sometimes you can look at top 50, but there's some teams in that 50 that aren't going to be in the field, and you can pad your record against those. This is a little more targeted and, for me, more meaningful. And I like Coastal's metrics here.
Yep, I'm with you. Coastal 6 makes sense to me. And then what, Mark?
Yeah, and then what, right? You've got a group of teams. You have Virginia, Florida, East Carolina was here last week. What do you do with Stanford? Indiana? I mean, there's a whole group of these teams, and none of them really fit at 7, but we got to pick somebody.
Boston College, maybe in that
Boston
mix.
College, yeah.
Maybe a DBU or a UConn.
Yeah, I mean, the issue I run into with a team like Indiana is, like, if you look at their metrics, a team like that, for me to be a national seed, you've got to take care of business in non-conference. They lost a series at Texas. They lost a series at Auburn. To me, like, that kind of that takes them out of the top 8 equation for me.
Yeah. Just
because you've got to win some of those games in non-conference. They did not do that.
Yeah. It's the same conversation we're going to have with Indiana State later.
Yep.
I mean, I still like Florida as a top 8. I don't know if I like them at 7 or 8, but I like them as a top 8.
So here's the thing about that. That would be the 5th SEC team. How important is that going to be to the committee?
Yeah, but is there somebody else that
so
you could argue?
To your point, I think if there is someone else, there'll be someone else. The question is there a valid candidate to take that spot? I think, based on the eye test and based on what Florida had done up until this past weekend against a very good team on the road, they're a top 8 team. But their schedule, they have Missouri at home this weekend, but they still have, they go to A&M. They still have Kentucky. They still have Vanderbilt. I mean, it's not easy down the stretch.
Yep.
Yeah. I mean, the other team to discuss here is UConn. I mean, so we just talked about Coastal's metrics, right?
Yeah.
I mean, look at UConn. They're 14 in RPI, number 27 non-conference strength of schedule. They're 6-3 against top 50, and they're 14-6 on the road. Like, if you're a committee and you're checking boxes, like, where's the negative mark on that resume? Like, there's
just
not
conference.
Really. Yeah,
just
exactly.
Conference strength. That's it.
Yeah.
But compare them to like a Boston College, who's 2 spots higher on the RPI at 12, 17-7 on the road, 11-9 top 50, and has won some probably more meaningful series as far as the strength of the opposition. I don't know.
They have a tough remaining schedule, though. I mean, they have Clemson, Clemson, who's been playing much better. Granted, it's at home.
Yep.
They're at Wake. I mean, let's just assume they lose 2 out of 3 there. And then they have Notre Dame, who suddenly is playing pretty well. So it's not an easy finish. And honestly, like I'm with you on BC's resume, but like, to me, just being 12-9 in the ACC is a little bit problematic.
Yeah, but I think against that remaining schedule, I would probably project them to go 5-4. Which would give them 17-13, which, with a good RPI and a lot of road games, that might be enough for top 8.
Yeah.
I don't know.
So going 5-4 in the ACC down the stretch is probably harder than what UConn's going to have to do, right? In order to stay there. See, who you play matters.
Yeah,
and this is one of the things that you look at the polls every week, and there's certain teams that keep climbing up the polls because they aren't having to play the kind of teams that are falling. Okay. So it's part of that dynamic. How does the committee view this? Are they going to reward teams who are playing these more challenging schedules, or are you going to get rewarded for just winning games regardless of who you play?
And it's worth noting that in UConn's case, they've still got to play 10-28 Villanova and 9-30 Butler in 3-game series. RPI Needs report says they've got no path to finish inside the top 16, and they need to win 14 out of their last 17 just to finish the top 32.
Well, and that would take them out of the mix then.
I think it's too early for them.
Yeah, way too early.
So Florida, Boston College. What about, should we look at Dallas Baptist? Are they in this? I mean, they're 13 in the RPI.
They have 3 wins versus the field.
That's it. Wow.
3-5.
Yeah, I mean, right now, I would probably lean Florida and Virginia still for those final 2 spots.
That's what I have.
Virginia though needs.
It's
to get
just a
together.
question of do you believe in Virginia? Are they going to right?
Well,
the ship, right?
so look at remaining schedules. They do get Duke and Louisville both at home, back-to-back weekends, and they go to Georgia Tech to finish the season. So, I mean, I would say they split the next 2 series. I think Duke's playing really well, and Louisville can be Louisville. And then Georgia Tech, I think they win that series. So I think they win 2 of their last 3.
Yeah, and you could conceivably see them winning all 3 potentially, and getting to 18 wins in the league. That's possible.
Yeah, so I still like them. They're probably in the E7 or 8 doesn't matter, but one of those 2 spots. The Pac-12 is the one that's interesting to me because you've got Oregon at 16, you got Stanford at 21. You kind of feel like one of those 2 is going to rise up and take one of those 8 spots, but I think it's too early.
Yeah, I like that Stanford is 13-5 in the league. 21 RPI is a little low for a top 8 seed, but there's opportunities for them to boost that. Yeah, that's tough.
Yeah, I mean, I would go Florida, Virginia.
I'm fine with that.
Yeah,
and then the next group, is Stanford, UConn, BC,
Indiana. What order do you like that next group?
Stanford.
Yeah, I think so too.
Yeah, I like saying, hey, Stanford, your RPI is not giving you a top 8, but we're going to give you the best remaining.
Yeah, I like Stanford. I think I like Boston College, Indiana, UConn.
Okay.
I think DBU needs to be a host.
Yeah, for sure.
Because the thing about it is, like, their RPI is within range. They're dominating their conference along with UTSA. I mean, the only issue you run into with DBU is they're 2-5 against top 50. That's problematic. But
the fact they're just steamrolling everybody. They've won 14 in a row or something. 15-3 in the league. I feel like they've kind of fit right here after UConn for me.
Okay. And then Oregon.
Yeah.
I'll probably have UConn ahead of Indiana as long as y'all are cool with that.
I feel like, Indiana's in considerably better RPI shape though, aren't they? Like with it's only 3 spots right now.
Look at the non-conference strength of schedule.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. That's fine.
The league's better too.
Has Connecticut even lost a weekend series? Let me look.
I don't.
They have not lost
so,
a weekend series. They went 2-2 against Ohio State opening weekend.
Okay. UConn, Indiana, DBU, Oregon leaves us with 2 spots.
So now's probably a good time to talk about Kentucky because if the season ended today, we've already slotted them. Okay, it just doesn't. With the last 4 weeks, it was just brutal. They're going to be underdogs in all 4. If that holds true, they have 11 wins now. They're going to go 4-8, and they're going to be 15-15, and that's not going to host. Even if they win one of them, they go, they have 16 with a good RPI. I mean, then they're on the bubble to host.
Right.
They're probably going to have to split these last games in order to be a host and be 17. Get that 17th win. They do that, they're in. It's just with Vandy, South Carolina, at Tennessee, and home against Florida.
Oh my gosh!
Good God, man!
Yeah, no shot.
I just don't see it. So that's why I would have them as a 2 this week, and then you're looking for somebody else like in East Carolina, like a Big 12 team. You believe in Oklahoma State coming back and getting it? Can West Virginia get there?
I kind of like West Virginia for one of these final 2 spots. I'm
too.
actually kind of down on East Carolina. So the East Carolina has some issues. So number one, that league from an RPI standpoint is garbage. So like their margin for error is minimal. They have a losing record on the road. They're 4-3 against top 50. So not like an amazing mark. They do have a 32 strength of schedule in non-conference.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't see them holding on to a top 15 RPI. But let's look at their midweek real quick. Aaron, what's the needs report say on them?
So they can finish in the top 16 if they win 13 of their last, or 13 or 14 of their last 15 games. So
they still have so they still have Ed NC State. The North Carolina game on our schedule on our site says postponed for May 3rd.
Right, they're going to make that up. It was originally part of the 3-game weekend series. We're going to make it up on a midweek.
Oh, okay, cool. And so then they have Ed ODU and Campbell. So there's some opportunities there.
But the problem is, getting swept by Wichita, who's respectable, but that's a big, that's now 2 real hiccups in the league. They're only 7-5 in conference. Don't like that.
Can I throw a team in here that I actually feel pretty confident about right now? Is Duke.
Yeah, Duke
12-8 in the ACC. Their RPIs their RPIs at 17. They're 12-8 against top 50.
Yep.
6-4 against top 25. What's not to like about that resume other than the 111 non-conference SOS?
Yeah, I think I like Duke and West Virginia for the last 2 spots in some order.
Mm-hmm.
I agree. I like what West Virginia's done, and West Virginia is 14-7 on the road. I think that's a really big feather in their cap.
Virginia and Duke.
West Virginia and Duke. I like that.
Okay.
So teams that are so what about where's Miami now? They're down to 28 in the RPI. Wow.
Yeah.
How did that happen?
Mm-hmm.
What's their league record?
12-9.
12-9. Man, there's a lot of teams 12-9 in that league.
Yeah, so they dropped considerably in the RPI after taking 2 out of 3 from Georgia Tech at home, losing to FAU midweek and beating Bethune-Cookman. So they're down to 28 in the RPI. Yeah, I think they're clearly behind Duke in the pecking order. So Miami would be out from last week.
What about
Texas?
Yeah.
Texas, East Carolina.
East Carolina.
I would also say, Mark, in recent memory, not trying to make you think too hard here, but in recent memory, since the top 16 era, who is the lowest RPI team to host?
I can pull that up.
So the reason why I say that is keep an eye on Campbell as well. Obviously the human polls like Campbell. The rack is probably going to like Campbell. They're 26 in RPI, 31-8. They're 28 non-conference strength of schedule, 14-6 road record.
Mm-hmm.
They're just a little light on some metrics. They're just 5-4 against top 50. They're 8-6 against top 100. So those metrics are a little iffy, but I love the strength of schedule out of conference.
Right.
It's a mid-major that went out and played people, and they're 14-6 on the road with an RPI that I think is within striking distance.
Yeah.
Okay. So I've got your numbers here. Let's just kind of take a little journey with Uncle Mark here. So the last year Texas A&M was 22 and they were a national seed. Okay. Yeah, so 21 would be La Tech at 19. In 2019, it was Oregon State at 22. In 18, it was Texas at 22. At 17, it was Houston at 17. So it was really close to the top 16.
Yeah. So you really need to be in the top 25. Then.
Yep. And then 16, it was 17. Fullerton at 25 in 2015. But those are outliers. So it's holding pretty close to that, and RPI line.
Yeah, I'm looking at the needs report. It says for Campbell to be in the top 16. Granted, they can still be 2021 and still be in the mix 22, but they would have to win 12 out of the last 15 games.
Yep. Which
might be doable in that league.
Might be doable.
Yeah.
Got to win those midweekers. That's the key. Duke tonight is a big one.
Yeah, keep an eye on them, though. I think they're right there within striking distance.
The other team I think we should talk about before we move on is Indiana State. And I think we all agree that 2-9 against top 50 really is a blemish. Yep. They are 10 in the RPI and they're 14-1 in their league.
They're red hot. Yeah. It's just, the good teams that they played, they just, other than the Vandy game, they really haven't won them.
Right.
So it's, it's you get credit, you get into the field for beating all these teams, but you're not going to host.
Yep,
not without better wins.
2-9 top 50, just can't get past it.
Hey, I'm gonna play devil's advocate here.
Mm-hmm.
What's the difference between when you break down the schedules? What is the difference between Indiana and Indiana State's resume?
The conference.
Yeah, and
neither team did anything in non-conference.
But also Indiana being 6-8 versus top 50 is a lot better than 2-9. Like that is a significant difference. And Indiana, hey, they played Auburn, they played Texas, both on the road to start the year, and won a game at each place. Didn't get swept. They beat Indiana State head to head in the midweek.
Yeah,
actually 1-1, I should say. So they split those two meetings.
Yeah, Indiana's 6-9 versus teams in the field, as opposed to 2-9.
Yeah, getting Indiana State, losing to Miami, getting swept by Northeastern, getting swept by Kentucky, that's a killer 2 weeks for them.
Yep. So, okay. So let's go with that then. Rather than rehash this, we'll keep it moving and move on to the Field of 64 at-large worksheet, conference by conference, starting, of course, with the America East, where Maine remains the pick here, 11-1 in the league. The American Athletic, obviously still East Carolina. It's going to be, there's no other team that's going to be that large. Wichita's up to 88 in the RPI, but they're still not going to get into at large. They're going to have to win the auto bid.
Yeah.
A10 Davidson has been our pick.
Still,
yeah. They're
hasn't
tied.
Enough happened to change.
They're tied with St. Louis, top standings at 9-3. We'll stick with the Wildcats. To the ACC.
Oh boy.
Wake Forest.
The bubble situation in this league is no bueno.
Yeah. Wake Forest, Virginia, Boston College, and Duke are already in as hosts. Is that all we have for hosts? I believe so. Yep.
Yeah.
And then we've got
Virginia.
Yeah. Wake Forest, Virginia, Boston College, Duke. And then we've got Miami. We've got so Clemson, I think, has to be in right now at 9-9 the league with a 22 RPI. How about their turnaround?
Yeah. Tough schedule remaining still, but yeah.
Yeah, it is. You're right. Virginia Tech is 10-10 in the league with a 46 RPI. North Carolina is 9-10 with a 47 RPI. So those are both kind of bubbly resumes at the moment. And then Notre Dame, 11-10 in the league with a 36 RPI. And Louisville, of course, 8-10 with a 32 RPI. So,
yeah, conceivably Virginia Tech and Clemson could be playing the second to last weekend of the year for potential at-large bid.
And I forgot also you have NC State, who has plummeted. They were in the top 10 in the RPI. Now they're 29 after getting swept by Clemson, 8-12 in the league. Not ideal position. I still think their remaining schedule is favorable. I would have right now. I would have Wake, Virginia, BC, Duke, Miami, Clemson, Louisville, NC State, and Notre Dame in with UNC and Virginia Tech on the bubble.
UNC, yeah. And you said NC State would be in?
I think so. You can put them bubble if you want.
Let me get through here too and make sure we're not forgetting someone.
They're NC State 8-12. Remaining series are they have the Citadel at home, and then they have at Notre Dame, at North Carolina versus Pitt. So it's two bubble teams and Pitt, who's frisky, but at home. That's certainly a series you think they would win.
Yeah. And that's your pecking order. Okay.
Yeah, you could do, I guess, Notre Dame, then NC State, I think, at this point, based on conference record.
Well, we're still 4 weeks left, 4 weeks and a tournament. We're still projecting a lot. So they look really similar right now. It's kind of splitting hairs. It's who you think is going to finish the best.
Notre Dame has Florida State at home, then NC State at home, They go out of conference against Akron, and then they finish at Boston College. So that's Notre Dame's remaining schedule.
Yeah. That's all we need is NC State being on the bubble again.
Oh, boy. Yeah, that's all we need.
PTSD from that one.
Right.
Oh, God.
North Carolina is at Virginia Tech versus NC State at Clemson. So that's a tougher road than some of these other ones. And the Hokies have North Carolina. They have Bowling Green for 3. Clemson at home and then at Wake. So that's also kind of similar.
Yeah, one thing that's interesting is NC State and North Carolina are both 6-13 against top 50. Wow. Clemson's 9-9.
Yeah, Clemson's much better shape, obviously, than neither of those teams. So, yeah, I guess that's my pecking order. NC State, Virginia Tech, North Carolina.
Okay.
Boy, Hokies are only 4-7 against the top 50. I don't know how that's possible in that league, that they haven't played more games.
Yeah.
Man, that's a tough remaining schedule for UNC. Good Lord.
Yeah, and they're 6-13 top 50 and not playing.
Yeah, UNCW at Vatech for 3, Campbell at East Carolina, NC State at Coastal Carolina, and at Clemson.
Wow, yeah, all those midweek games are hard in addition to
Oh, man, I don't like the chances here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, you can look at it two ways. There's a way to win your way in. But
hey, they go. Hey, what's funny is they go on a run. They can host.
Yeah,
you're right. Yep.
Like last year.
Yep. So this is 11 ACC teams on our sheet. I doubt we're going to have 11. We'll probably end up cutting North Carolina, but for now we can leave them on.
Yep.
Okay. Let's go to the ASUN. FGCU would remain the pick for me. The 13-5 tied with Lipscomb. 73 RPI, so not at large. Yeah. Probably be a 1-bid league.
Aligned.
Big 12. We've got West Virginia in as a host. You've got Oklahoma State.
Yep.
TCU would be on the bubble for me right now.
Yeah. I mean, they're 52 in the RPI with a 7-8 record in the league.
I still feel pretty confident about Texas Tech.
Yeah, Texas Tech's in, but that RPI is a problem.
Still problematic at 66.
Yeah. Same thing for Kansas State for me.
Yeah.
I mean, the conference record's good, and there's an opportunity there for them to make a run. The RPI is still a problem, though.
Guess who plays this weekend? Kansas State and Texas Tech, who's 60. Kansas State 68 in RPI, Texas Tech 67, and they have comparable conference records, and they play this weekend in Manhattan.
Yeah,
huge series.
I think. I look at them pretty similar. I mean, obviously from a resume standpoint, I think Texas Tech has better talent, but it's just a question of how this is going to finish, because I do think that, as we saw last year with some of these teams, that you don't have to have a top 40 RPI if you have something else. Okay.
Yep.
And if they finish, say, second in the league, or maybe it's third, they're going to get in.
Right. So West Virginia, Oklahoma State, Texas. I would still have Texas in that safely in category with a 35 RPI, 8-7 in the league. Yeah. Obviously, they dropped a lot after getting swept at Oklahoma. They're no longer a host, but and then TCU, Texas Tech, K-State, all on the bubble. I'd probably go that order. Does that make sense?
Texas Tech, TCU, then K-State.
Well, I was going to say TCU, Texas Tech, then K-State, but you can flip them.
Okay.
Whatever. We'll come back to it. For now, that's 6 Big 12s on the worksheet.
Okay.
Big East, UConn remains the projected AQ. They're actually a game behind Xavier in the standings. Xavier 45 in the RPI.
Yeah.
We had Xavier out
12 against quad 1 though. They're not they're not getting in at 3-12 against top 50.
Yeah, I think you're right. That's the reason we had them out last week. So I think that remains the case.
Okay.
Big South is Campbell, of course.
Mm-hmm.
Big 10. So last week we had Maryland, Indiana, and Iowa in. Indiana, of course, already in as a host.
Yeah.
Maryland is 8-4. RPI has improved a little bit at 61. Iowa 7-5 in the league with a 43 RPI. I think they've improved their status a little bit since last week after sweeping Nebraska. Big series there.
Yeah, I've got Iowa in. I've also got Maryland as they're my third team here.
Yeah, they would be my third team as well. They had the head-to-head. The team that would be comparable to Maryland would be Rutgers, and Maryland won the head-to-head in that one.
Yeah, Rutgers 7-5 in the league, tied for fourth with Iowa, Michigan State, and Nebraska, but a 48 RPI, better than Michigan State and Nebraska.
Yeah.
So, should we add Rutgers to the list here or no? They won 5 in a row now.
I mean, you can put them on the board. They may be a candidate for our next 4 or something like that.
Maryland, by the way, just to kind of dive into the resume, Maryland has a golden opportunity this weekend to boost its profile significantly at Indiana for 3 games.
Yeah, it's big.
Big for both teams. I mean, Indiana could play their way out of hosting with a bad weekend.
Yep. So we'll add Rutgers to the list. It gives us a 4th Big Ten to consider.
Mm-hmm.
On to the Big West. Fullerton remains, I think, the automatic qualifier projection, 3.5 games ahead of Northridge and Santa Barbara in the standings. They're 15-3 in the league with a 49 RPI. Santa Barbara still in great at-large shape. 2nd place, 10-5 in the league with a 24 RPI. So I think you're probably looking at 2. We should talk about. I think Irvine would be the 3rd team that has a at-large caliber RPI at 44. They're 7-8 in the league, however, and this past weekend they lost 2 out of 3 at home to Kansas State.
Yeah.
So
they need to do better in conference. If that goes up, the RPI is in position.
Yeah.
And 7-3 against RPI top 50 is strong.
Yeah.
But their remaining schedule includes series against UC Davis, who's 14-21, and Riverside, who's 7-29. That's
there it comes.
That's one that. But they also play Northridge at home, Hawaii. Those teams have winning records, and they have Bakersfield for 3, who's 14-21. So 3 of the last 5 series against teams with poor records.
And the RPI is going to reflect that too.
You would think so, yeah. The news report says they need to win 16 out of the last 19 to finish in the top 45.
Mm-hmm.
So I would say probably keep them out for now.
Yeah.
Yep. I would say in the Colonial, I think we have a change, boys.
Okay.
UNCW over Elon is the automatic.
Yeah.
Elon lost a series. Elon went from like in the 30s in the RPI to 58 last weekend from losing that home series at Stony Brook.
Yeah.
UNCW has Northeastern at home.
They went from a 2 seed to out.
Yep.
Yeah. 58 RPI all of a sudden.
We still like Northeastern.
I like the fact they're 6-0 against top 50. Granted, 3 of those are Indiana State, but still
top 10 RPI team. 39 RPI for Northeastern, 13-5 league. Yes, I like them in. Elon out, so this becomes a 2-bid league, and that's all for now. Charleston, William & Mary still down in the 80s, not getting there yet. Conference USA, we have Dallas Baptist. Let's make sure we make them the automatic qualifier. I think last week we might have had UTSA. I like DBU here.
Okay.
And then UTSA would be in as an at-large team with a 14-3 record in the league and a 41 RPI.
Yep.
Charlotte hanging around 12-5 in the league, 56 RPI. They won 8 of their last 10.
Yeah.
Swept UAB this past weekend, but lost 2 important midweek games at North Carolina versus ECU.
Yeah, they're certainly trending in the right direction. It's just how much faith do you have in them getting back in it?
Yeah. At the remaining schedules at Western Kentucky versus FAU, at FIU versus Middle Tennessee. So very navigable for sure to get that conference record up, and it's already pretty good at 12-5. So I don't know. I mean, put them on the board or not yet? Put them on the board.
Yeah, the top 50 record is problematic though.
Yeah,
to say the least.
What do we got there? Top 50?
3-10.
Yeah, that hurts. That's probably keep them out. Let's just keep them out then for the same reason we keep out a couple of the others in that boat. Okay. Like Xavier, similar profile as Xavier, really. That poor top 50 record, just kind of. The Wright State League. I've got Wright State here.
As you should.
13-5 they are. Just a game up on the Norse of Northern Kentucky, but 1-bid league. Wright State's RPI is 95. Ivy, we've been going with Columbia. They're tied with Penn atop the standings. I say we stick with the Lions here.
Agreed.
Also 1-bid league. They're both outside the top 100. The MAC. Stick with the Bronx. Ride them Bronx. 11-4. They're in first place still. Tick ahead of Fairfield and Canisius.
Yep.
To the MAC. Mid-American Conference. We've
Four-way tie in the MAC.
A four-way tie, boys. Kent State, Ball State, Central Michigan, Ohio, all tied at 13-5. Flash just stubbed their toe, lost the series at Miami, Ohio. They also did lose the head-to-head series to Central Michigan. Central Michigan also has a head-to-head series win against Ball State. I kind of like the chips, boys.
All right, let's do it.
Yeah, you can't go wrong with Jordan Bishel.
So that's a AQ change. Central Michigan replaces Kent State. Okay. In the Valley, of course, we've got Indiana State in already. It's a one-bid league unless they don't win their automatic qualifier.
Yep.
Nobody else inside the top. Well, I guess Evansville's the next at 74. They're in fourth place. To the Mountain West, we've had the Spartans of San Jose State. I would stick with them. They're still in first place at 13-6.
Yeah, Brad Sanfilippo's done a great job there.
Northeast Conference, Central Connecticut Athletic Conference, 18-3. 3 games ahead of second place, Fairleigh Dickinson. So stick with Central Connecticut.
Yep.
Ohio Valley, we've had SEMO. They remain in first place, a half game ahead of Morehead State. I'm fine sticking with SEMO.
Yeah.
Pac-12, Stanford and Oregon are already in. You've got Arizona State in with they're actually currently in first place at 13-4, 31 RPI. You've got the Beavers in 11-10 with a 33 RPI, and then you've got USC and UCLA. Trojans are 11-7. RPI has improved some. They're at number 60. I would have them in right now. UCLA 9-7-1, just lost the head-to-head to USC, but 42 RPI. I would have them in also. I
think they're all in.
Yeah. And I guess we can keep USC on the bubble just because they're of the RPI, but I really like the position that they're in.
Okay.
Patriot League, and there's nobody else in the pack, right? Washington, no 8-9 with a 57 RPI. Patriot League, Army is now 6 games ahead of second place Navy, 16-2 for Army. How about that? Running away with it. 15 wins in a row, guys. Goodness gracious. All right, SEC. LSU, Vandy, South Carolina, Arkansas, Florida already in as top 8 seeds. Kentucky is already in, not a host just yet, but just outside the hosting line. You've got A&M, who just won a series from Kentucky. They're 9-9. They've won, what, Kendall, 4 series in a row?
Yep.
With a 30 RPI, they're in. Bama is, as you mentioned, 9-9 with a 20 RPI. They're safe right now.
Yep. Tennessee
certainly in safely now with a 26 RPI and an 8-10 record after sweeping Vandy. They went from 5-10 to 8-10, just like that. Their outlook looks a whole lot rosier.
Yep.
Mississippi State would fall out.
They would. And the 2 teams to talk about would be Auburn and Georgia.
Yeah.
I think Georgia is a team, because of where their RPI is, if they get to 13 wins, they've got a great shot to get in.
Yeah.
Auburn's RPI isn't as strong, so they might need that 14th win, but they would be my next 2 teams.
So they're both 7-11 in the league. Georgia currently 18 in the RPI, Auburn 38. So top 50 wins, Georgia 8-12, Auburn 9-12. So those metrics are comparable. It's really just the difference is just RPI. Let's look at remaining schedule, shall we?
So I've got it right here. So Georgia is at Ole Miss, home against Tennessee, at Missouri, and home against LSU.
Okay.
Meanwhile, Auburn goes to South Carolina, hosts LSU, goes to Ole Miss, and hosts Missouri. So
I kind of like Georgia's path a little better.
Yeah,
they get the 2 road series or easier teams.
Yeah, Auburn does have the head-to-head, although that was a really close series where Georgia made a 2-out throwing error to cost themselves the game. As Auburn, they're going to make a furious comeback every week. So
yeah,
that's their MO.
All right.
I mean, I think they're both on the board. Auburn does have the head-to-head. But I think Georgia has a little bit better resume if you want to go that route.
So let's look at high-end series wins for Georgia. They swept Arkansas. They took 2 out of 3 from Kentucky, both at home.
Mm-hmm.
And that's it. I mean, they have the series win against Georgia Tech, who's not a regional team. Looking at Auburn now, quality series wins include 2 out of 3 against Indiana the first week, 2-0-1 against USC. So they started off in it's amazing their RPI is so low with those 2 nice non-conference series wins. And then 2 out of 3 against Georgia, as we mentioned. That's really it in conference. I mean, Mississippi State, but that's not a regional team.
Can I invoke the weekend dish here a little bit from SEC Extra?
Please do.
Georgia has played the toughest schedule in the SEC to date through this past weekend, according to the weekend dish.
And they're in decent
Georgia's remaining schedule is 12th, the 12th most difficult schedule remaining.
Yeah. So let's definitely have Georgia ahead of Auburn, and we can right now put them both on the list here, which would give us how many? 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay.
Not to mention they're in a pretty significant position of strength, being 20 spots ahead of Auburn in the RPI.
Yep, absolutely right. Okay.
And we know how often the committee just goes with straight RPI picks.
Yeah. All right. Onward to the SoCon. We have where are you, SoCon? Still Wofford, yes.
So Terry, you're athletic. Although there is a 3-way tie.
Yeah.
Yeah, I watched some of that. That was a really good series. It was an extra inning game on Saturday. That was kind of the flip. Yeah,
Wofford 8-4 with a 51 RPI. Not quite as strong position as they were in last year for an at-large when they did not get one. So probably going to wind up being a 1-bid league, but Wofford has at least a chance at an at-large.
Mm-hmm.
Mercer 92 RPI, Samford 81 RPI are both tied with Wofford. Probably neither one of those is going to get to at-large position. Southland boys, we had Incarnate Word last week.
I think it's time to flip to Nichols.
Make that change. Nicholls State is now 1-4 in a row. They're back in first place at 8-4 percentage points, but like a half game ahead of Incarnate Word. So Nichols.
They play LSU tonight, and that could be a precursor of a future meeting if this holds.
Indeed. 1-bid league, though, nobody even close to that large range here. The SWAC, we have Alabama State still 15-3 in the league, tied with the Rattlers. That race has continued to be competitive, but we'll stick with the Hornets here. Summit Oral Roberts
Athletic League.
Yeah, 14-1, 4 games ahead of second place South Dakota State. Just 97 RPI, not going to be an at-large team, but they're in control there.
Your number 4 seed at the Dallas Baptist right there.
There you go. Sunbelt, Coastal, Southern Miss still in with an 11-7 record and a 19 RPI. You've got Troy.
Troy's still in.
They would be in for me.
Yeah, they just won the series from Texas State.
Yeah, and that's a week after winning series at Louisiana. So Troy really put themselves in a good spot here. 34 RPI, 10-8 in the league. And then you've got ODU, Texas State, both in the back-to-back in the RPI, 53-54. They're tied at 10-8 in the standings.
That's a tough one. The big loser this past weekend was Louisiana. They were in position to be in that large, a bubble team. They dropped all the way to 70 after getting swept by James Madison on the road.
Yeah.
So basically, LSU midweek game meant nothing.
Yep, they lost it. Yep.
Texas State plays at ODU this weekend, by the way. Big series. Texas State also must go to Louisiana in 2 weeks. So,
honestly, I don't think either one are getting in at this point.
Yeah,
unless they win the automatic.
I would agree. So I would say for now, let's make this a 3-bid league, take them both off. So that's last week. Did we have Louisiana in last week? I don't think we did, right?
We did not.
No.
So just Texas State falls out here.
Ironically enough, the RPI actually went up over the weekend.
All right, West Coast Conference.
If you go to, let's see here, it went up. Well, it's a little off, but it went up about 5 or 6 spots.
West Coast Conference remains LMU. They're 14-4, 3 games ahead of second place Portland and San Diego. 86 RPI, again, still not at large caliber, but to the WAC, Sam Houston would remain the pick for me. They're still in first place at 15-6, but they
lost a series of Utah Valley at home over the weekend.
Yeah, that's not great. I mean, you could switch it back to Grand Canyon if you have more faith in the Lopes.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they haven't exactly played great lately either.
But they did win their series. They swept Utah Tech this past weekend and then lost a Monday game to the Beavers.
Yeah, swept the worst team in the league.
Yeah. Yeah, we can. I mean, Sam has the head-to-head series edge. Let's stick with Sam.
Yeah.
I like that.
So,
all right, 4 spots.
Yeah, not bad. 68 teams for 64 spots. We have probably a couple of easy cuts here.
Rutgers, Kansas State, UNC would be the 3 for me for sure.
Yeah, I
think
Auburn,
so. Probably. That would probably be my 4 eliminations, actually. Auburn, UNC, Kansas State, Rutgers.
I think I'm with you. Kansas State.
Okay, Rutgers.
Rutgers was not in last week, right? No.
Yeah.
And then
well, okay, so the only one I would say, I think there is a discussion to be had about Virginia Tech versus like Auburn.
Yeah, so it would be the 11th team in the SEC versus the 10th team in the ACC. So not a huge difference there.
Mm-hmm.
I do. Well, let's take another look at Virginia Tech.
The thing about Auburn is they do have that series win over Indiana non-conference. They
and USC
series against USC.
They won the series against USC.
2-0-1, yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I mean that's impactful. I mean, that's 2 big non-conference weekends.
Let's look at the good series wins for Va Tech. They took 2 out of 3 from Virginia. They split 2 on the road at Duke. Swept Charlotte.
Yeah, I mean.
Okay.
Again, the Hokies' path is versus North Carolina at home, versus Clemson at home, and at Wake Forest. So I think you could probably project Virginia Tech to go 5-4 down the stretch in the league and get to 15-14.
So that would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. The 10th ACC team. That would be pretty symmetrical if I was in a committee setting.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I still lean the Hokies here. But it's close.
So is there anyone else that you would look at? I mean, Auburn did take the series from USC.
Yeah, that's true.
Is there anyone at Maryland?
I think I like Maryland in.
I do too.
It's really
I mean, the one argument or debate you could have is like Auburn, was 28 spots ahead of USC in the RPI, and they have the head-to-head.
Right.
Like it'd be very difficult for a committee member to go, "Oh, USC should clearly be in over Auburn."
Now, USC though, and USC, the other thing about USC is they're just 5-10-1 against the top 50. But Auburn is also not, they're 9-12. It's better than 5-10-1, but it's not like they're a winning record against top 50.
Mm-hmm.
Certainly,
they're also 3-9 against top, or 3-9 on the road.
Who's that?
Auburn.
Yeah.
Of course, USC's 5-9. So
of course, you look at who those are against. Okay,
yeah.
You go to Arkansas. Who's the other one they struggled in? Alabama and who? I don't have it in front of me.
Not sure.
Here's another metric for you as well. I'm actually starting to lean Auburn here because here's another metric. Non-conference strength of schedule, Auburn 68, USC 210.
Florida. Yeah. Those road games at Arkansas, at Florida, at Alabama.
That's a tough one.
But what do we think about Auburn's remaining schedule? Didn't we decide that
it is challenging? Yeah. I mean, they go to the other USC, South Carolina. They have LSU at home. They go to Ole Miss, and they host Missouri.
So I think best case scenario is probably 6-6. which would get them to 13 wins, as you said, with an RPI that's not. I mean, it'll probably go up.
It would go up.
Yeah.
They would need to win that playing game at Hoover.
And of course, the other part of this is, we aren't projecting any stolen bids.
Right.
So don't get too excited if you're in the last 4 right now.
Right. Yeah. Usually those last 4 after 10 weeks don't wind up making it.
Yep.
Unless they help themselves down the stretch. I will say that I do like the idea of rewarding a team that's performing well in the Pac-12. The Pac-12 is pretty good this year. Yeah. They're 11-7. Just won a series from UCLA. Feels like it'd be weird to drop them out when they were in last week. I mean,
we can keep them in for now. I would say Auburn is the first team out, though.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, honestly, Georgia took Auburn's spot by how well they played last weekend.
Right. So Auburn, Rutgers, Kansas State, probably North Carolina would be our next 4.
And I do think, and I wrote this in the dish, I do think it's important of your pecking order within your conference, especially in a situation like this where, you kind of, maybe you have an artificial cap at 10 teams and you look at it in a season where, like last year and the year before, the SEC had 8, and then there was a 9th team sitting out there.
Yeah.
And Alabama got in, and Ole Miss got in, last year. I think that kind of matters, right? Where you are in your pecking order within your league.
I agree.
And I think Georgia this week jumped ahead of Auburn, and through no fault of their own, Auburn, they won a series against Mississippi State, but they didn't sweep Arkansas. Okay. And that to me is that and how we're projecting to look ahead is the difference.
So we've dropped out this week, Elon, Mississippi State, Texas State, and North Carolina. We've added Georgia, Clemson, Notre Dame, and who else? Who else did we add? Do you remember?
So we added, you said Clemson, Georgia,
Notre Dame,
Wilmington.
Yeah.
That
was an automatic. Oh, I see. So that was an automatic bid change. So it's not an at-large change. Okay. That makes sense. Yep. That adds up.
Okay.
3 in, 3 out. We have a couple of automatic qualifier changes. UNC Wilmington replaces Elon. DBU replaces UTSA, but UTSA is still on the field. Central Michigan replaces Kent State, and Nichols replaces Incarnate Word. So 4 automatic qualifier changes, 3 at-large changes, and our next 4 are
put next 5: Auburn, Kansas State, North Carolina, Rutgers, Texas State in that order.
Or Charlotte, I would say, maybe
Auburn.
Versus.
I like Auburn, Kansas State, Rutgers for sure.
Yeah.
After that, maybe North Carolina.
And then I would say either Charlotte or Texas State for the next one.
I would say Texas State, given the top 50 record.
Okay.
Yep.
They just got to win some road games. I mean, they lost a series at South. They lost a series at Troy.
Yeah. And our last 4 in would be in some order: Virginia Tech, USC,
Georgia,
Maryland, and Georgia.
Yeah. Okay. And if we're doing a 5th, since we did 5 for the other, would be
ECU or Texas Tech.
Yeah. Who do you like?
I would say TCU would be in worse shape for me.
Okay.
Since they have the head-to-head.
Okay.
All right. Not bad this week, boys. We were on a clock and we made good time.
Yeah, I like the midday Nerdcast.
This is the way to go. We have 40 minutes to spare here. Should we just riff for a while?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Maybe
Mark's gonna do his Quahog field while we're on here.
We can do that.
Seen any good shows lately, boys?
All right, Runes. Not really. I'm watching baseball all the time, trying to give our subscribers everything I can.
Runes
A+ effort.
Runes hit us with the all-time weirdest inane banter question to start the show yesterday.
Yeah, that was weird.
He asked us, was there a house in your neighborhood growing up where people would go to have sleepovers? And I was like, that is, even by Rudy's standards, that one's out of left field. I love it, though.
Yeah.
Runes keeps us on our toes.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, I don't have any last thoughts. I think we've covered it all.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I think the only thing for me is how some of these bubble teams are going to finish, right? Because we're doing a whole lot of projecting, and there's no way to know. I mean, look at the SEC last week. Look at the ACC last week. All kinds of, unpredictable results. So trying to make sense of all this as we go down the stretch, I mean, this is big fun, guys. So I do think that what we'll be able to do over the next, I don't know, few weeks, we'll be able to start sizing the bubble and trying to understand, okay, well, what leagues you really need to watch for conference tournament upsets, and then also the bottom of the host, because it's really volatile right now. We have teams that are 3 seeds that are now hosting, right, and vice versa. So all of that's going to start to take shape over the next couple of weeks. It's going to be super cool.
Yeah.
Can I use the hashtag Big Fun?
Big fun.
Yeah. I'm gonna go with hashtag super cool.
Super cool.
Well, that's all for this week, everyone. Thanks to our friends at S2 Cognition for sponsoring the pod. Make sure you check them out if you're looking to get better at baseball. I mean, come on, those guys. That's
anything really,
or anything. If you want to make sure you're drafting the right quarterback, make sure you check out S2.
Yeah, Aaron's taking his test next week in his hopes of being like a top 10 NFL draft pick next year.
Fingers crossed, guys. I like my chances. I'm very cognitive.
Hey, it'll even help you at nerdcasting.
That's right. Exactly. All right.
And we could use it.
No, I mean, we're a well-oiled machine. Look at this, 56 minutes, and we're already well into the banter section. We crushed it.
All that cognitive ability.
That's it. Thank you.
I love how Mark drops in the Hell State drinking.
Yeah, I went to Super Bulldog weekend last week. There it is. So
he's got his Alabama underwear.
Yeah.
Good stuff, boys. Well, thank you again. Thanks to everyone for listening, and we'll do it again next week. Until then, so long.